Hello, tea family. How are you today? I'm hoping you can hear me. Can you hear me? Let's try this. All right, everybody. I'm hoping you can hear me. Nope.
I could hear it up here.
Let's see. Is everybody able to hear me now? You're able to hear me? Awesome. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. I hope you all are having a wonderful weekend. And if you are living anywhere near where I am, hopefully the storms have gone. They look like they're gone for right now, although what I see in the forecast is more storms and possible tornadoes. So, just the fun of living in the Midwest in the springtime. I want to say hi to anybody joining us for the first time after finding out about us at the Tulip Festival this weekend. Welcome to part of our tea family. So today, I would love for you to say hello and let me know what you are having as a beverage today. I am not drinking tea tonight, something unusual, but I've been outside for 2 days and I'm bringing some water. So let me know in the chat or the comments, depending on how you're joining us, what you're drinking today. Now, I do want to start by being that, mom roll for a second and say, stop settling for tea in those dusty tea bags that are in the supermarket shelf. Today, we're actually going to be answering some questions that we received over the weekend and some that are I actually looked up what the most searched question about what loose leaf tea was on the internet. I asked Google. And so we're going to answer that question as well. So like I said, just say hello in the chat or the comments. All right. So Diane is enjoying Harmony today hot. That is wonderful. That was a very popular blend. That was one of the most popular blends. It sold out more than anything yesterday. I have to check the numbers for today, but we just got back. So
Stephanie is Onyx Chai.
Stephanie is on Onyx Chai. So Stephanie, I want to share with you one thing that happened. One of the questions that we got this weekend was, is this 1 ounce pack the only size that you sell your Onyx Chai in? And of course, at events, we only bring 1 ounce packs with us. We can do a 2 ounce pack when we're home and shipping it out. However, I was like, although I do have a friend who loves Onyx Chai and she buys it a pint mason jar at a time. And she's like, I might be one of those. So Stephanie, you're not alone in that. I just wanted to say you are not alone in your love of Onyx Chai, because she has had it before and really enjoyed it. And she's like, that pint jar might be a thing.
Yeah, she needs
You have a jar that needs to be refilled. All right. Well, we can take care of that the next time I see you. For sure. No problem. But I thought it was so funny because she was like, 2 ounces, and she, 1 ounce, is this all you have? And then I was like, well, we can do 2 ounces on the website, but we don't typically bring 2 ounces because it would be just too much to deal with at an event. And then she was like, that's all. And I thought, this is another Stephanie's favorite kind of person. So there you go. All right. We are going to be talking about why your garden is great for your leftover teas after your multiple brews, some of the truth about caffeine. I also want to talk about a blend that is possibly coming in the future. We're kind of playing around with it now. I know we've got some coming out, especially for this Friday. We are having our Tea and Treasures Mother's Day live tea party sale. And we definitely got some feedback on some great new products that went over extremely well at the event this weekend. And Kim is on her 3rd brew of Aloha Breeze tonight. Well, Kim is ready for Friday because Aloha Breeze will be one of our limited editions, only to be able to get it at the event on Friday, the live sale. That is one of the teas. And then we'll have another one that is event only. And we are going to be introducing another tea. Will be debuting at that event, but that will be a more permanent tea. So Let's go ahead and dive in. We've got some other questions. And as always, if you have any questions, please just put them in the chat or comments. I am happy to answer them live. I have been answering lots of questions over the weekend, and that's always so much fun. So one of the questions I was asked this weekend is loose leaf tea more expensive or less expensive? And one of the things I like to share was because you can brew it more times, it is actually works out typically to be less expensive than that supermarket dust. Not only is it a better quality, but the better quality means you get more brews from the same leaves, and then they can still be used for other things afterwards. So you're going to get 3 times as many cups for the price. And that is always one of those things. People are amazed at how many cups you get in a 1 ounce serving of tea. So 1 ounce of tea, a loose leaf tea that you can brew 3 times, generally will give you 30 to 33 cups worth of tea. Now I say generally because you'll have some people who don't want to do the multiple brews. You have other people who do more than 3 brews. You'll have some that, when we made Harmony last year into the ice cream, we had brewed it in milk, so we couldn't rebrew. So there's the size of the cup, how strong you like your tea, how weak you like your tea. There's lots of factors in there, but generally speaking, 1 ounce of tea with 3 rebrews is 30 to 33 cups, or 10 to 11 first-time brews, if that helps. Kim is definitely excited for restocking her Aloha Breeze. There you go. Count up how many and how much you wanted, and then you'll be all set for next year. The other thing is there were a lot of people that were deliberately moving from coffee to tea. So one of the questions that I received a lot this weekend was, what kind of special equipment do I need? And I think this comes from the fact that we have that British tea party, or we have that Asian tea party and ritual and ceremonies in mind. And it is very much an intricate thing where everything matters, and the kind of teapot, the kinds of teas, and how you brew it, and different things like that. And that's great for those kinds of events. However, most of us don't always sit down. When we sit down for a cup of tea, I'm not always having some kind of tea ceremony with it or a tea party with it. I am most of the time just wanting to enjoy my tea, maybe the caffeine in the morning, but definitely the tea. So there's a difference, and it's really simple. You need a cup, you need the loose leaf tea, and some kind of strainer or infuser like that. So even just a regular kitchen strainer will work, because there are lots of ways to do it. And you don't have to get fancy. Now, one of the things we did introduce to our market events is something that those of you who ordered over the Black Friday weekend, and one of the special free gifts that was included at all the levels that people didn't realize was a reusable muslin tea bag. Now, why would I use that? No microplastics, no metal, completely reusable. And when it eventually wears out, which these kinds of things will eventually wear out, you can literally just compost it in the garden. Made in the USA, not in another country. That is one of the great things. It's big enough to let all your tea leaves expand. And sometimes you just want the convenience of that tea bag. There's your way to do it. And that was actually a very, very popular item. So that was one of the things. You could have something really simple like that. I even told people, if you don't, and they're like, I don't think I have a strainer that's that fine. But they had cheesecloth. I was like, you can just literally make your own cheesecloth kind of tea bag kind of thing. So you don't need a lot of fancy equipment. Now, it is popular. It does make life easier. We all know that I have the infuser that I can dump up upside down and right side up. I like that a lot, especially for travel. But you don't need any fancy gear. You can just enjoy it. Now, Obviously, it's a great way for people to get you some of that fancy gear for different gifts and occasions. However, you really keep it simple. Another question was what is the difference between a tea kettle and a teapot? And so, obviously, a tea kettle is something that you use to heat water in, and a teapot is typically where you would put the tea or the tea leaves. And then a lot of times, what they would do, especially if you have a caffeine free blend, you could put the tea leaves in or the ingredients in the pot and then add the water and then just pour it through a tea strainer on the other side right into your cup. However, they do have tea kettles that also have a built-in infuser. So is it a teapot? Is it a tea kettle? And I would say typically think of it this way. The kettle is kind of going to be your stovetop athlete. It heats the water, it produces the energy, whereas the teapot is our cozy moment on the couch or the sofa or your chair where the tea actually steeps and you get to relax and enjoy it afterwards. One of the things I do want to warn people, I did get asked, is never put a ceramic teapot on a burner unless you're looking to have a kitchen fire, and I don't think anybody wants that. But there are glass teapots that are specialty, but you have to make sure that your glass teapot is made for that. So they do have some. I know that our middle child actually has one that she likes specifically so that she can use it, her teapot either way. But typically your tea kettle is what you heat the water in versus the teapot is where you brew your tea. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Does green tea have caffeine in it? Yes. I know that this is going to sound funny, but that is actually one of the most Googled questions. And that I thought that was really interesting. People hear how healthy green tea is and they just try. And it's funny because there's the people that have been converted over completely. They love green tea. They don't drink any other kind now. And then you'll have the people that are like, well, I know it's good for me, but I don't really like it very much, but I drink it because it's good for me. And it's kind of funny, but there is this notion that a lot of people think that green tea, because it's so healthy, is actually caffeine free because they still see it as green. They still see it as being, a fresh plant, but it is still Camellia sinensis, and that particular plant has some caffeine in it. It's just typically going to hit your system way slower than coffee and be more of a time release or slowly come into your system. And green tea does have less caffeine than coffee, with the exception of a couple of different blends like matcha. Matcha typically has more. So keep that in mind. Okay, loose leaf tea versus tea bags on caffeine. Caffeine was a big topic this weekend. Loose leaf tea has more potential for caffeine because the leaves are a higher quality. But what actually ends up happening is the tea bags release the caffeine faster. And this is because most of the supermarket tea bags have what we call duster fannings in it. And therefore they are, think of a series of sieves, as I've said, and the broken end leaves are at the top and what's left over that, like true dust, fannings at the bottom. That is higher in caffeine and it is higher in tannic acid. And one of the reasons for that is that it has more surface area. So kind of the more surface area it has. So if you think about it, if you have a plant, I don't have anything. Okay. We're going to do this. If I have this towel, right? I only have theoretically 1, 4, 5, 6 sides to it, right? Because it's just a hand, it's a washcloth actually. But if I take this and I break it into 4 pieces, then I have 4 pieces that now have 6 sides to it. And every time you break that leaf down, there's more surface area. There's more sides to count for the same amount of the tea leaf. Does that make sense? So you start with a whole leaf. You've got, the front, the top, the bottom, and then the 4 sides. If I rip that in half, I have the same amount of tea leaf, but I now added more surface area. And every time I break that leaf, I add more surface area. That surface area is where the caffeine is, and it allows it to release faster because it has more surface area. So, if that makes sense, this is why the bags typically are going to drop a lot of caffeine really, really quickly, whereas that loose leaf tea is going to be slower, although they do have the potential, and a lot of it impacts on what kind of tea leaves and things like that. All right. Another question we got, are all teas gluten-free? So I want to really caution you here. Pure tea, pure Camellia sinensis is completely gluten-free. But if it's mixed with other ingredients that have gluten in or in contact with them, that can add gluten to it. There are also some barley blends or teas with natural flavors, see the air quotes, that can, or malt that actually sneak some gluten in. So if you have celiac, always check and make sure on your label, because although the tea leaf itself doesn't have gluten, what it's come in contact and other ingredients included in there could be having an impact. Okay, take some of my water. All right, and reminder, if you have any questions, just go ahead, put them in the chat or the comments. One of the questions I received was, what was my favorite type of way to brew tea? And they were kind of trying to figure out which kind of infuser and, tea bags. And I was not really a huge help at first, because they said, I brew my tea lots of ways. I brew it by the cup. I use a lot of basket infusers. I do use a strainer. I have used, I put the leaves in and put the water in and then just kind of poured it out. And I have my infuser that my travel infuser, there's water in there, and then I have the tea leaves up above, and I put it upside down and I brew it. And I had to say that it really depended on where I was brewing. If I'm going in someplace where I can have access to hot water, but maybe nothing else, then that's when I'm going to use that flip-flop brewer infuser. Otherwise, if I'm traveling and I am trying to consolidate as much as possible, I will use tea bags and kind of pre-packed, so I make sure I have some of my own tea throughout the time. If I'm going someplace where I know I'm going to have access to like basket infusers, or I have a little more space, then that's pretty much my favorite way, is to use an infuser. I just love the fact that they can really expand greater. What was funny is I was asked this question at the same time, and I am going to shout this out. Happy birthday to Caitlin. Our middle child's birthday is today, and I was calling her. There was no one there because we had bad storms and so I was making a quick call to say happy birthday. And then someone came in and they're like, well, which basket infuser would you prefer? And they were going between the strainer and one of the basket infusers. And I was like, well, actually, I would prefer the basket infuser. What was really funny is Katie popped up on the phone. She goes, and tell them that the leaves can get bigger in there and they're not as squished. And I just had to chuckle. I'm like, yep, she's heard that before. So that is one of the things. Is I think for me, it's very situational. So it's kind of hard for me to say my favorite, but generally at home, I actually like the teapot infuser when I have people over, so that I can just brew a pot at a time. But if I'm brewing it for myself, it's an individual basket infuser for the most part.
They also said happy birthday to her too.
They did say happy birthday. Some strange person, one of our customers was like, happy birthday. And she's like, oh, thank you. Okay. Is that leftover tea that you've brewed those multiple times good for anything? Yes, it is extremely good for plants, especially roses. Roses absolutely love the nitrogen-rich used tea plants. So one of the things that you can do is after you've used it the 3 times, if you have an infuser or even if a reusable tea bag where you kind of put them out, we have a bowl, just a really cheap bowl that we put on our back porch right by the Slater. And then when we water the plants, okay, let's be honest, when Rich waters the plants in the morning, he can then take and put, sometimes he'll put his used coffee grounds, and we'll put the tea leaves in there. Those are things that really help the soil and break it up and things like that. So that's one of the things that he does. And so that's an easy way to do it, but you can just sprinkle them once they're cool right onto the soil right by your plant, and it'll help feed nitrogen and really help your plants. And since there's nothing else in it, you're good to go. So I talked about another blend that we have been working on, and one of the blends that we have been working on is actually a green tea blend, which we've kind of moved away from a little bit because we created so many. And then we were really focused on our caffeine freeze for a while. We are looking at one, and I know I've kind of talked about it, but this one is definitely going to have rosemary as one of the ingredients and some green tea and not fruit, but something else that we've got a couple of different possibilities. But one of them I'm considering it has to do with thyme. It's a very herby green tea blend, but I'm going to mix that with a Chinese jasmine green tea so that I have some sweetness to balance off with the herbs, but I haven't quite gotten it there yet. I also, Stephanie, I know you're going to be happy about this. Are you ready? We expect to be finished putting the final touches on a potential pumpkin spice tea in May timeframe so that it could potentially go to testers the beginning of June. Now, I know you're our pumpkin spice kind of gal, so I thought I would just give you the heads up. We have been working on it. We did freeze dry quite a bit of pumpkin last year in preparation of testing and making some teas. It will probably be a special event tea at this point in time. Not that that means it has to stay that way. Hello, enter Highland Dawn. But I wanted to kind of give you a heads up on some of the things that we are working on, and a K-State tea that we may have a name for at this point.
We may have to find people willing to test them too.
You think we'll be able to find anybody willing to test a pumpkin spice tea?
I don't know.
Well, we'll have to try and see if we can find any testers for that. So Kim's excited about that. That's awesome. So yes, we are looking at that. I am not this huge pumpkin spice everything kind of person, but it is fun. It was kind of fun to play around and not make just a chai, to actually make a pumpkin spice. It was a little bit different. So we're pretty close to that. All right. And I actually had a question. We was talking to someone and they were like, well, I heard I can only really drink green tea because it's really healthy and this, that, and the other thing. And we kind of had the chat that green tea, white tea, black tea, oolong, all comes from the same plant, just how the leaves are processed. And they asked me, well, how does tea leaves... Diane wants to definitely be a tester for the pumpkin spice. Kim's willing. I love this. So they wanted to kind of go into a little more depth about how tea leaves are oxidized, and I thought this would be fun to answer as well, because last week I talked about the difference between Chinese tea being kind of toasted versus Japanese green tea being steamed to help it oxidize that little bit. And I thought you might enjoy understanding a little bit better yourself. So this was another question I thought I would answer. So I want you to think of it like an apple. So a bruised apple versus a dried apple. So a bruised apple, it's taken some impact That's one way. But when you kind of dry it out, similar to the freeze drying of the apples, it makes it sweeter, draws all the water out, it makes it sweeter. But it definitely browns. The apple turns brown because it's been out in the air longer. It's the same kind of thing. It's that same oxidation process. So if that helps, perfect apple that's just kind of been harvested versus one that's been kind of handled or bruised versus one that is partially dried out because it got left out, partially oxidated. That's kind of like your oolong, and then like a dried apple or a freeze-dried apple. Those are the great ones, the ways to think about how things are oxidized in things like heat affected and the amount of air it gets and the type of air it gets and different things. And humidity levels all impact it just like it does for tea. So that's kind of what I had for questions this week. If anybody else has any questions or comments, I do want to invite everybody, while I'm giving you a chance to kind of type in, I did want to invite everybody to the live sale on Friday. Aloha Breeze will definitely be among the things. And I have a couple of other things that I'm working on. In fact, we don't have any in the camper because they just sold really well. We did create that little taster. I kind of talked about that earlier this week on our social media. They were extremely popular. People loved the idea of being able to get like kind of one of 4 or 5 different teas. The packets were a little full and kept up opening themselves. And so I think we'll go to 4 different teas. Plus we included one of the reusable muslin tea bags in there. And so I think we'll go to 4 teas in the tea bag as opposed to 5 teas in the tea bag. But they were very popular. People loved them because they could try the caffeine free, they could try the green teas, and we did a black tea. So there were, I only think we have like 1 of the 12 left. So they were we could definitely have sold more of certain ones, caffeine free, again, very, very popular. So I'm not seeing any questions or comments come up, but I'm giving you that extra second. So 7 p.m. on Friday. Yes, 7 p.m. on Friday. And then next Sunday, we'll be back to our thing. The live sale is 7 p.m. Central Time on Friday. Yes, the 17th. That is Friday. How is it already the middle of April? Didn't we just have April 1st like 2 days ago? I swear I lost like 2 weeks of this month already. But yes, we have been making a lot of tea, and now we have to go home. The good thing is we have to go home and make more tea. The bad thing is we have to go home and make more tea. But there's been a lot going on this month already, and it is not over. We have 2 events. We have the live sale, and then the other thing, this is probably the last call if you were doing it virtually, the custom tea blending class that we will be having on the 25th on the Saturday. So in person, you can kind of get it in a little bit later because I will be bringing your custom kit. But if I have to ship it, especially with our mail system lately, it has been very slow. So you're about at the max if you want to join us virtually for that session. All right, I don't see any other questions or comments or anything. So thank you so much for joining me. I enjoyed interacting with everybody, and I will see you all later. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.